Hello. Hello and welcome to Archival Adventures. Is there music? Was there music? I thought there was. It feels like there isn't at the moment, but I can't really tell because even when there was music, I could barely hear it. There was indeed. Okay, good. Hi. It's good to see everybody. Hello, Key Squared. Hello, Hannah. It's good to have you in chat. Yeah, I think it was, I managed to go live right as it was switching songs. So, yeah. No worries. Apparently, I have things set so that my ears can't really hear everything. It's fine. Anyway, if there are problems, let me know. And oh. Oh. Oh gosh, that's not what I wanted. Hey, look, I figured out how to turn up the volume in my ears. Okay, how about we get down to business? I have a lovely stream today. We're headed off to the jet age, looking at some materials from Grahame Duce, I think. That's the only way that I can think of for how to pronounce that name. So we'll find out. But let's go ahead and dive right in with our acknowledgements and then a quick look at the finding aid, and then we'll start looking at materials. Hopefully that sounds good. But it is great to have everybody here today. It's good to see you. All right. There we go. So we're going to start, as always, with the land acknowledgement and labor recognition from Virginia Tech. This show is taking place at the University Libraries at Virginia Tech, and this is the official statement on this topic from Virginia Tech. You can see Office for Inclusion and Diversity, inclusive.vt.edu are the people who wrote this. So Virginia Tech acknowledges that we live and work on the Tutelo and Monacan people's homeland, and we recognize their continued relationships with their lands and waterways. We further acknowledge that the Morrill Land Grant College Act of 1862 enabled the Commonwealth of Virginia to finance and found Virginia Tech through the forced removal of Native nations from their lands in Western territories. We understand that honoring Native peoples without explicit material commitments falls short of our institutional responsibilities. Through sustained, transparent, and meaningful engagement with the Tutelo and Monacan peoples and other Native nations, we commit to changing the trajectory of Virginia Tech's history by increasing Indigenous student, staff, and faculty recruitment and retention, diversifying course offerings, and meeting the growing needs of all Virginia tribes and supporting their sovereignty. Virginia Tech acknowledges that its Blacksburg campus sits partly on land that was previously the site of the Smithfield and Solitude plantations, owned by members of the Preston family. Between the 1770s and the 1860s, the Prestons and other local white families that owned parcels of what became Virginia Tech also owned hundreds of enslaved people. We acknowledge that enslaved black people generated wealth that financed the predecessor institution to Virginia Tech, the Preston and Olin Institute. And they also worked on construction of its building. Not until 1953, however, was the first black student permitted to enroll. Through Inclusive VT, the institutional and individual commitment to AdProSim that I may serve. In the spirit of community, diversity, and excellence, we commit to advancing a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. All right, let me make sure that I have everything set for us to take a look at the finding aid. And let's talk about what these materials that we're going to look at today actually are. All right, so what we have today is the Grahame Duce papers, I don't know. I'm guessing Duce, but it's entirely a guess. I have no idea. I've never seen this name before. This is the extent. One thin box. And yet, they seem kind of neat. So, let's see. They cover 1920 to 1947. Includes the papers of President of Duce Aeronautical Research in Baltimore, Maryland. Includes typescript alphabetical index of approved aircraft, manuscript drafts of articles on pilot safety, paratroop devices, air races, Boeing XB-47 Stratojet, the future of jet pilots, and miscellaneous notes. This finding aid, not the most useful that I have ever seen. We can talk a little bit about why in just a second when we get down to the actual breakdown by folder. Ooh, thank you, Hannah. I totally forgot. We did the acknowledgements, and I forgot to throw that in there too. You had a customer walk in almost as soon as I showed up. I'm glad that I have that magic for you, and that you get customers by attending the stream. All right, so we got these papers via donation. They were donated to us in 1987, but they were not processed, it looks like, until October of 2005. The extent of the biographical note: Grahame Duce was president of Duce Aeronautical Research, located at 2100 Mount Royal Terrace, Apartment 6, Baltimore. I don't know what the 17 has to do there, but Maryland. I did try to see if I could find anything more, and I could find no information on a company called Duce Aeronautical Research. I did not try looking for the person. It's possible I might learn some more. Based on the contents of what's in the collection and the very sparse information, I think Duce Aeronautical Research was basically a one-person operation that was like somebody doing consultancy work out of their own home. And the things that are in here, they read more like magazine or news articles than reports from a company. So we'll see that, but I'm guessing that's why we have so little of a biographical note, because this person, while they are listed as president of this company, I think it was a one-person company and not a very well-known one. Therefore, there's not a ton of documentation on it. But as you see, you tried looking up the person, and the top two links were to these papers and a collection in different archives. And I think if you follow the link for the collection in a different archives, it's actually pointing back to our archives. Because I did the same, and I was like, ooh, somebody else has papers from this person. And when I went to look at it, it was referencing the Archives of American Aerospace Exploration, which are held by us. So I think this is all that exists, or all that is available and locatable via the internet. But as you can see here, we've got various notes in Box 1, Folder 1. New Paratroop devices incorporated in packets, Box 1, Folder 2, circa 1947. Alphabetical index of approved aircraft. Fastest long ranger, the Martin XB-48 makes its first flight. Precedent forgotten, red tape cut in building XB-48 in 14 months. Airlines in the red. New pilot plus good judgment equals long life. What value air races? And let's see, the Boeing XB-47 Stratojet, jet pilot, and the future of jet planes, speed alone is not enough. Yes, when you check the link for the other, it ends up linking back to us. So yeah, I think this may be the only source, which is not uncommon for historical or archival collections. It is definitely a thing that happens where there is one place that has material and that is it. For this, it just happens to be us. So this is the finding aid. We'll start glancing at things, but if one of these titles jumps out to you and you're like, I'm really curious about that one, let me know in chat and I'll make sure that we get to that one. Otherwise, I'm just gonna start pulling them out and we'll just start going through them. Let's go to the top-down camera that hopefully will give us a picture. We've got a picture. Now, let's see if I can get zoom control established for the camera, and then I'll get a document under it. This has been a recalcitrant piece of technology the past couple of streams, to where I get it set up ahead of time and then it wants to misbehave partway through. And I was trying to avoid that this week by not setting it up beforehand. So we'll see how long it lasts. I think last week, my control of it went away twice during stream, which was super fun. Currently, someone named Grahame Duce, who is a current chief investment officer at a company. Otherwise, everything just circles back to these papers. Yeah, no idea. But I don't know how extensively the person who cataloged these materials read them, so maybe we'll come across something. But, oh, we are zoomed out a slight bit further than I had thought. So the first folder, various notes, box 1, folder 1. These actually span 1920 to 1939. And as you can see, we've got just a listing of aircraft. I don't know what the second numbers are. So if somebody does know like what some of these numbers are, I would be interested in knowing. But you can see like Aeromarine, PG-1. Barling, NBL-1, Boeing GAX, Boeing GA2, etc. But then I don't know this second column. Like this, I believe, is like manufacturer and like the model number. But I don't know these for certain. This is, I think, the least interesting of the folders, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. But if somebody sees something that you're just like, oh, wow, that's so cool, make sure you shout out in chat so that I can focus on it. Glenn Martin Bomber, 2 Liberty 12s, unsupercharged. Yep, it says unsupercharged. It's giving some various statistics on it. See, I think these are just like personal notes about certain kinds of aircraft. Performance test of a Junkers JL6 with a 185 horsepower BMW engine. And then, no notes, but also, was there an actual like aircraft manufacturer that was named Junkers? Coming up with things like the air spring, so possibly a list of parts. That would make sense. Curtiss Falcon, the Curtiss Shrike. We've got the Fokker, YB-13 Martin. These just seem like sort of shorthand notes. The Wright Whirlwind and the Clark Y-Wing. I would, like, the most fun thing for me with this would be to just like do a general internet search on each of the names of the aircraft that are mentioned here, just to see what they look like. I'm not going to do that for stream because we have other things to get to, but a much more sensible name in German, it's the same as Young. But yeah, the Junkers Company was a big industrial firm. Interesting. Junkers, I guess, not Junkers. The Wright Whirlwind was a family of air-cooled radial aircraft engines built by Wright Aeronautical. Yeah, so I think this document is just like a lot of notes about various aircraft parts then. Which is interesting. Not as interesting as the long-form writing that this person had done, but like it includes notes like C-27 sesquiplane, steel tube fuselage, wood wings, fabric covered, Hornet 575. I don't know, like the C-27 sesquiplane is for the Hornet, I'm guessing, but I don't know. I would have to dig into it and like parse a couple of entries to figure out the pattern of model number, notes, and like the intent behind writing them. I think it would be possible because it seems to be consistent. So like the one above, C-14 General Aviation single-engined monoplane cantilever, all wood wing, steel tube fuselage and tail surfaces, pilot's cockpit open in rear of passenger cabin, which seats 6 persons. Cyclone, 525 horsepower. I think the C-14 is the Cyclone, but yeah. A Clark Y is the name of a particular airfoil profile widely used in general purpose aircraft designs and much studied in aerodynamics over the years. The profile was designed in 1922 by Virginius E. Clark using thickness distribution of the German-developed Göttingen, my accent, not great today. It's fine. 398 airfoil, Goettingen, and I know that should have like a diphthong on it, but I'm not getting the diphthong right now. And then this looks like similar type notes, but on some hotel stationery for the Hotel Goldsboro in Goldsboro, North Carolina. I'm guessing he was attending some sort of conference at the hotel and jotted down notes about aircraft. Also, lots of long-form division. Fun. Yeah, we're not going to spend a ton of time in this folder. I like the name here, though. The XB-2 Night Bomber. I can't see. I'm going to zoom in with the camera, because if I zoom in with the camera, maybe I can make it out on the screen. Four Lewis guns. 5 crew, span 90 feet, length 47 feet 4.5 inches height, 16.6 inches wing area, 1496 weight, empty 9300, use load 7291, weight loaded 16591, wing loading 11.08. I don't know what that means. Power load 13.1, max speed 132, cruising 105.5, stalling 55.9, climb 850 feet per minute, service ceiling 17,100, range 805 miles. I just love the name is Night Bomber. The Lewis was a smallish, for its time, machine gun. The music seems a little loud now. Okay. It could just be the song, too. But, now it went even louder because I accidentally bumped the volume control louder. That should hopefully be better. So those are interesting, but I'm uncertain what their purpose was at the moment. They seem like they seem to me like notes that somebody was making for themselves to try and like learn about the aircraft, which is interesting, but I believe less interesting than these. And I just remembered the reason the finding aid was better, the finding aid was better than I expected when I looked at it, and it was because, and I just remembered because my handwriting is on the folder, it's because I fixed the finding aid when I was prepping for stream. Because each of these folders, each of these documents has a title on it, and none of those titles were reflected in the finding aid. So I added them. All right, so we have some stationery here. Grahame Duce, and this is where the address clearly came from that was in the finding aid. And you'll note at the end of the last page of this document, there is this address sticker, Duce Aeronautical Research, Grahame Duce, President, and then the same address. That's how we have a title, is because it was here under his signature on the last page. Okay, come on, music. We're going to switch to a different feel, I think. That was getting a bit over the top for what I wanted for stream. But so let's take a look at some of these and see what did this aeronautical research firm actually produce. So you can see multi-page manuscript here, and as we look at it, I think I'm curious to see what you all think, because I have a theory that I developed from looking at it. I'm curious to see what you all think the intent of these documents was. Because right now it's still a mystery, like, what is this Duce aeronautical research? What was the purpose of its existence? All right, new Paratroop devices incorporated in packets. And I think I looked up packets when I was looking at this, trying to remember what packets meant in reference to paratroop or to parachuting. Just gonna double check. Yeah, maybe I didn't. Well, we'll find out possibly. I don't know. I thought I had looked it up, but I don't note, I wasn't able to find a quick answer just now, so. The slab-sided flying boxcars, which are assembled in the sprawling Fairchild Aircraft Corporation factories at Hagerstown, Maryland, have added a lot of new wrinkles to that old wartime business of parachuting soldiers from airplanes. The boxcars, now standard Air Force equipment and officially known as C-82A Packets, there we go, seem super efficient and even luxurious after their smaller, rough-and-ready predecessors of Normandy days. Their advent into the Army has brought unexpected repercussions from veteran parachutists. A group of old-timers in the 82nd Airborne Division, for instance, complained of readjustment difficulties in the ultra-modern troop carrier when the famous parachute outfit first made the Packet its standard jump ship after the war. The war-bred troopers may have been awed, for one thing, by a highly mechanized system of parachuting supplies from the C-82 simultaneously with the dropping humans. The boys of the wartime 82nd Airborne had their supplies unceremoniously kicked out of the airplanes after them, and sometimes their supplies, including weapons, would drop embarrassingly far away. But in the C-82s nowadays, it's all done as mechanically as the Fairchild assembly line itself, in this manner. Paracans, the 350-pound bundles containing mortars, machine guns, food, medical equipment, etc., are suspended from the electrically actuated overhead trolleys, running the length of the cargo hold of the Packet. From a monorail, they are shot out of the plane at better than 1 a second, to drop at about the same time and in the same place as the paratrooper. Hagerstown, conscious of its position as home of this formidable aircraft plant, has a proprietary interest in these packets. The factory is in the spotlight of local interest, and when any new modification of the cargo carrier is rumored, speculation sweeps the town. The latest explosion of rumors was touched off by the appearance of a number of C-82s on the ramp before an experimental hangar with their tails and wingtips painted a bright fire engine red. These ships, it developed later, are to be used in the Army's Operation Yukon, a 4-month Arctic training exercise. From November to March, the packets will haul men and supplies of the 2nd Infantry Division over the frozen Alaskan training area. They were trimmed in red to increase visibility should one be forced down in the snow. This is one evidence of a fact the Army has admitted. It expects the packet to occupy a key role in the much-publicized all-air army of the future, in which all troops and their equipment are to be transportable by airplane. As if to dramatize its huge cargo capacity, its top load is 10.5 tons. The Army has staged a number of spectacular freight-carrying stunts. When a B-12 crashed in a Nicaraguan jungle several months ago, the crew was dramatically rescued by the use of 3 helicopters. To rush the copters to the scene, Air Force crews merely removed their overhead rotors and loaded them bodily into C-82s. In a recent test at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, a packet roared into the air carrying a 4,400-pound howitzer and a 1.5-ton Jeep, which were parachuted to a designated maneuver area in much the same way a flying boxcar emits armed men. 4,000 men and women work in 9 separate Fairchild factories that spread over several acres 5 miles north of Hagerstown. That is just half the number that manned the assembly lines during the war. But now only 7 cargo ships are produced monthly instead of the 12 per month during hostilities. The production line here is a far cry from that. I lost my spot. The production line here is a far cry from that of an automobile factory where a complete auto is thrown together in 30 minutes. Here there is not one assembly line, but a main line, dovetailed with a half-dozen sub-assembly systems and which turn out engines, fuselages, wings, and other sections of the airplanes. Instead of minutes, it takes a full 120 days to assemble one packet. Much of the actual manufacturing and fabrication of parts is done here, in a stage before the assembly line, although some of the elements in the C-82s must be shipped here from distant states. In any of the main production rooms of the huge plant, the visitor can look for hundreds of yards in any direction and see the same sight. Employees under the blue and yellow fluorescent lights swarming around the difficult components of the embryonic cargo airplane. The assemblage process follows this pattern. Powerful overhead cranes haul into place at the beginning of the assembly line, a center section of the giant wing. It moves slowly down the line, and nacelles for the 2 1,700 horsepower engines are swung into position, and then the motors themselves. Next, derricks hoist into place the massive fuselage. As days go by, the long, graceful twin booms are worked into the developing airplane, to be followed by tail surfaces and outer wing sections. At last, the finished packet is test flown by a check pilot who takes it off a runway directly adjoining the plant. It's an expensive flight. This ship's operating cost, including fuel by the hour, is about $150. This branch of the extensive Fairchild system is still run with many of the restrictions of war. Before being admitted to the factory, the visitor must pass a series of guards, high-ranking Army officers which watch production and guard military secrecy. Still under wraps, for example, are the specifications of a new airplane, a modification of the C-82, which stands next to the packets on a ramp open to the gaze of passers-by. This is the larger, more powerful C-119. Fairchild Aircraft Corporation, an official declared, is like all American aviation in that it depends heavily on Army and Navy contracts. Evidently, Fairchild's military production has stood it in good stead, for it finished 1946 with a profit which, according to the spokesman, was unusual for post-war aviation manufacturers. A stockholders' report showed that for the year 1946, Fairchild had a gross income of $48,861,870. Net income to be retained for growth of the business was $962,047. No dividends were declared. The end. Yeah, billion would have been a lot in 1947. I can't find an exact answer, but it looks like the 17 after Baltimore in the address has to do with the ward or area. Yeah, it seemed like it was maybe serving the same function as zip code would, because there was no zip code listed. So I just don't know that I had necessarily consciously registered that sort of address format previously. So that's part of this document. And I could pull up some internet photos of the C-82 and the C-119 just so we can get a visual to go along with the text. But there are 2 additional pages here. Note to editor. The official date may be used by you as supplementary material, this official data may be used by you as supplementary material if you wish to rewrite or add to my article. The XC-82FA Fairchild Packet, one of which was powered under contract AC 30435, specification X3231B, 1944, AAF serial number 43-13202, was a high-wing twin-boom long-range cargo transport. Was Fairchild Model F-78, was powered by 2 R-2834 engines, had 2 Hamilton Standard Hydromatic 3-bladed propellers equipped with alcohol de-icers and accommodated 42 troops or 32 litters or 10,000 pounds of cargo. 200 C-82A FAs, C-82A-1FA to C-82A-30FA series were ordered under contract AC-124, bore AAF serial numbers, with numbers there inclusive, and were produced. 3 C-82N1NTs were produced by North American, Dallas, Texas factory, bearing serial numbers 4525436 to 4525438, inclusive under contract, dated June 30, 1945. This contract called for 1,000 planes, but was canceled, and only the aforementioned 3 were actually procured. The 997 canceled, bore AF serial numbers, inclusive. The C-82As and C-82Ns were similar to the XC-82, except they had R-2885 engines and changes from integral fuel tanks to rubber bags, thereby decreasing fuel capacity by 250 gallons. The C-82FA and the C-82A-1FA models were powered with R-2822 engines in lieu of the R-2885s. First acceptance June 1945. This is a lot of very technical detail here. The XC-82FA and the X-82A-FAs had span of 106 feet 0 inches, length 75 feet 10 inches. The C-82N and Ts had length of 77 feet 2 inches, span same. Gross weight of all models 42,000 pounds. Top speed of XC-82 was 235, XC-82As was 223, and C-82Ns was 225 miles per hour. More production models will be ordered. And then a chart. Apparently the first models were being ordered in August of 42, and then this went on up to June of 45, where he's got some detailed information, or they've got some detailed information. I don't actually know anything about the person, so they don't have to be a he. Let's see. Fairchild C-82 Packet. I'm gonna just pull up some images here. And then that's the C-82A, and then the Fairchild C-119 flying boxcar. All right, so we've got the C-82A Packet and the C-119 flying boxcar. We'll take a look at some pictures. 2100 Mount Royal is apparently a B&B now. Okay. Let me make sure that I have all of the things set to what they need to be set to so that I can share this with you. I think I do have... All right. So this first shot here, this is the Fairchild C-82A Packet. The plane that most of this article was focused on. This image is a public domain photo that is attached to the Wikipedia file. Public domain because it's a United States Air Force photo. So that is the packet. That is what this article was about. It did mention the C-119 at the end. The C-119 apparently was called the flying boxcar, and that is a picture of the C-119. There's some information provided here. Again, an Air Force photo. The U.S. Air Force Fairchild C-119B-10 FA flying boxcar of the 314th Troop Carrier Group in 1952. This aircraft was later converted to a C-119C in 55-6. The 314th TCG served in Japan during the Korean War, participating in 2 major airborne operations in Suncheon in October 1950 and at Munsan-ni in March 1951. It later transported supplies to Korea and evacuated prisoners of war. I just think since we read articles about them, it was nice to get a chance to maybe see what they looked like. And they are apparently referred to as flying boxcars. So, cool. I think these articles are really neat. And so, what do you think the point was of these? Because, like, they're signed at the end with that aeronautical research company name, right? I have lost that page. So the Duce Aeronautical Research. But it's an article. It's like a magazine article or a news article for an aerospace-focused news service, right? Like, this is Duce Aeronautical Research and very technical information about, like, the production of these planes. But note to editor, this official data may be used by you in any way you see fit in connection with my article. And it's very very clearly an article. It seems like these were authored for publication in a magazine somewhere. And I think it would enhance the collection if we knew what magazine that was. Unfortunately, we don't. I don't know much of anything about this collection, honestly. I did not have time to go back and see if I could track down the original accession record. The finding aid says these were donated to us. I'm curious as to who donated them and whether there is any additional information in among the donation records. It's doubtful that there would be, because if there had been anything of use, it should have just been copied over into the finding aid. That doesn't mean I won't potentially go and look. This one has a slightly different purpose than all of the others, because most of the stuff in here is like what we just saw. It's clearly the manuscript of an article for potential publication. And they're about contemporary aircraft events, aircraft happenings at the time they were written. This, though, Alphabetical Index of Approved Aircraft, which is an interesting name. It's literally just a listing of every aircraft that has received an airworthiness directive. From what I can tell, as of July 1st, 1947, these are all of the FAA-approved aircraft. And so the airworthiness directive is their approval for use, if I'm understanding correctly. So I'm not going to necessarily go through everything here, but if there's a historic aircraft that you happen to like, we can look and see if it's listed. Otherwise, I'm just going to sort of skim through here, and there are some notes or something at the end, I think, that might give a little more context as to, like, what is this big long list of aircraft about? I don't know. Maybe we can find out. I didn't spend a ton of time with the collection beforehand. I spent enough time with it to, I tried so hard. I wanted to mix this with, because we have an aeronautical brochures collection that has like brochures for lots of different aircraft. We looked at that brochure collection previously on stream, and I was like, hey, I should look and see if we have brochures for the aircraft that are being described in this collection. We didn't. But I tried. Aeromarine Clem, Aeronica Aircraft Corporation, various models, Aetna Aircraft Corporation, Air Transport Manufacturing Limited, Aircraft Associates, Aircraft Builders Corporation. Yeah. American Eagle. Amphibians Incorporated. Garden City, Long Island, New York. The N2B Neptune. Oh, that sounds intriguing. I've never heard of amphibians. It sounds like a 1980s cartoon. Barnard. So, like, literally, this is just like an entire long list of just like aircraft approved for use by the FAA. I assume it's by the FAA, right? They're the ones that issue airworthiness directives in the US. yeah, I'm going to skip ahead because it's literally just a list of aircraft model numbers. So we're not going to like read every single aircraft model number. But as I said, if there's an aircraft that you happen to love and are particularly interested in, we can look it up and see if it's on the list. If it was created sometime before 1947, there's a good chance it will be. Porterfield, Overcashier, Paramount, Schweitzer, Simplex Aircraft Corporation, the Red Arrow, the Viking Flying Boat Company, New Haven, Connecticut, and their models are called Kitty Hawk B2, 4, and 8. I always find something interesting, something fun. So at the end of it, at the end of the list, and it looks like this was intended to be like maybe sealed this way for mailing. I'm not certain. But that's what it seems like to me, like maybe it was meant to be folded in half for mailing. But note, for any additional photos, data, performance figures, or other information, write Duce Aeronautical Research, G. Grahame Duce, President. Like, it's just a list of model numbers, but you can apparently request additional photos, data, performance figures, or other information from G. Grahame Duce. I don't know. I want to know more. I think it's really interesting, and I wish that I had been able to find more information because I really want to know more. I'm really curious. I was not expecting this type of stuff when I pulled out the collection to look at it. It's really technical. It's clear it's clear that this person really knew their stuff. They also can write good prose in a sort of like magazine or newspaper article style prose. I want to know more about this person. I want to know, I want to know more. And sadly, we have basically no info about them. This is not the first time that one of my favorite things in our collections is something we know almost nothing about. I have twice shared the Watercolors of Fungi collection that just has gorgeous watercolors of fungus, expertly done, and we know nothing about the creator. Or, we could speculate as to why it was made, but we know nothing. Just call us Jon Snow. Fastest Long Ranger. Is there a date? July 18th, 1947. And this one I think is interesting. You can see there's some spots where the page has gotten wet. I think as I read it, you will understand why and how. Because this is one that I actually read as I was preparing for stream. For the second time within 10 days, the plane was before the cameras. Newsreel photographers had been on hand when it rolled majestically from the Boeing factory in Seattle, Washington. Now they were back, this time for the real show. The airplane was to make its first flight. There was plenty of reason for the excitement. The ship was the new B-50, a Boeing airplane that had been termed the Army Air Force's standard long-range bomber by AAF officials even before it was on the assembly line. Now the big B-50 was ready to prove the confidence put in its design. Now the big B-50 was ready to prove the confidence put in its designers as well-founded. Sorry, my brain didn't parse that sentence correctly the first time. Also, it's come up multiple times now, so I want to look up the abbreviation AAF. Oh, AAF is Army Air Force. Which makes sense. I just had not encountered that abbreviation previously. So AAF is Army Air Force. For the past week, pre-flight mechanics had been grooming the plane for this debut. The bomber had been carefully checked and rechecked. 2 days ago, the flight test crews had started engine run-ups and taxi runs. Although adapted from the basic design of the famous B-29 Superfortress, and greatly resembling it externally, 75% of the B-50's design work was new. The flight test crew also was treating the bomber with the respect due a new plane. As the 50 had progressed on the drawing boards and along the assembly line, the flyers had studied it, learned its control system and instrument panel, its general characteristics. From the wind tunnel research, they had learned the plane's flying habits. There was little about the bomber they didn't know already. Now they were to take it to the final proving ground. The proving ground, in this case, was to be 10,000 feet above the Earth. And that was far below the B-50's top altitude, for it is a pressurized, high-altitude bomber. But it was enough for a first flight. Data on the plane's substratosphere abilities would come with the many hours of experimental flight to follow. Now the crew was ready for takeoff. Test pilot Elliot Merrill and co-pilot Robert Lamson and 5 crew members were at their stations. As the ship's 4 Pratt & Whitney Wasp major engines were set at takeoff power, they gave a deep-throated roar that told of a new power, 59% more than that of the B-29 Superfortress. Then the B-50 started racing down the runway. Quickly and easily it lifted from the ground, 1,500 feet down the runway and nosed southward. The takeoff looked almost too easy, too routine to be that of a new airplane. Engineers watching the performance had a satisfied look as the bomber disappeared over the Puget Sound horizon. While the plane was making its first flight, Boeing public relations personnel were telling the newsreel cameramen and the press what the B-50 could do. These performance figures stated, "The ship has a top speed approaching 400 miles per hour. It is about 50 miles per hour faster than any other bomber capable of flying equivalent distances. The new bomber cruises 27% faster than the B-29 at equal range, the B-50 flying at 300 miles per hour as compared to 239 miles per hour for the B-29. The additional speed and range were gained without increasing the dimensions of the B-50 over the B-29 except for a slight increase in tail height. The research and careful engineering of the ship could do long before... Sorry. I skipped a line. The research and careful engineering of Boeing made it possible to know approximately what the ship could do long before it left the final assembly area of the factory. The experimental flights the plane would undergo within the next few months would bear this out, and they would also lay the groundwork for future military planes to come from the Boeing factory. The research had made possible more than the prediction of performance figures before a flight. It had given the plane a wing that was 16% stronger, 26% more efficient, and 650 pounds lighter than the B-29 wing. A landing gear system that retracts in 11 seconds as compared to 35 seconds for the B-29 Superfortress. Thermal anti-icing, a system that prevents ice from forming rather than the old method of chipping it off after it had formed. Increased structural efficiency and a simplification of maintenance work. Most important, the research and engineering that was put into the B-50 made it possible for test pilot Merrill to conclude the hour-long first flight with the comment, "Everything went according to plan. We have an excellent airplane." The end. G. Grahame Duce, 18 July 1947. Duce Aeronautical Research. From before the Air Force was a separate service. Yes, Key Squared. So this was written on the back of National Security Corporation letterhead. Ooh. Ooh. That's new. So, sorry, another clue. Because we had the, we knew about the G. Grahame Duce, President Duce Aeronautical Research, based in Baltimore. This, National Security Corporation, New York, Vincent Cullen, President. But G. Grahame Duce, Special Agent, Greensboro, North Carolina. A new location to see if we can find info about this person. I don't know that we will, but, sorry, not National Security, National Surety Corporation, which is an insurance agency. National Surety would be an insurance agency. Yes, National Surety Marine Insurance Corporation. I think he was an insurance agent for aircraft. Which would be why he was so interested in the particulars and details, why he was compiling a list of, or maintaining a list of approved aircraft. And I would guess the corporation probably put out, now, like, the work that he did here that's signed Duce Aeronautical Research, I'm guessing he no longer worked for National Surety. But if his background is in insurance, that explains a lot. And might actually solve part of the mystery. Yeah, nothing's going to come up right away with a search, but I just did like a quick search just to see. Nothing immediate, but National Surety, an insurance company, it appears Grahame was at one point an employee of theirs, which adds some context as to where the very particular technical approach to analyzing the aircraft came from, which, yeah, absolutely fascinating. Boeing B-50. Let's get a picture of the B-50. The B-50 Superfortress, which this one is contrasting the B-50 Superfortress with the B-29 Superfortress. So I can actually try and pull that up as well, which looks like it'll be really easy because the Wikipedia article links directly to the B-29 Superfortress. So we can get photographs of both. Let's go ahead and take a look. First, this is the B-29 Superfortress, the B-29 bomber. Very famous. Let's see, this public domain Air Force photograph. Don't know that there's not like a caption, so it's a picture of the B-29 bomber. And this one, I'm going to zoom in if I can. Maybe. It's a low resolution, smaller photo, but this is the B-50. Very similar, which was mentioned in the article, that the overall look of the aircraft was very similar. The only real change was that the tail height that the tail is higher, which is demonstrated in comparing these two photographs. And at the beginning of the article, it mentions nacelles as it's talking about the aircraft being built. And you can see them down here at the lower part, or the very bottom of the picture there. There's one of the nacelles on the wing. So interesting. The Air Force Boeing B-50 Superfortress, which made the first non-stop flight around the world in 1949. So this particular one, photographed here, was the first to make a non-stop flight around the world, 1949, named Lucky Lady 2, part of the 43rd Bomb Group. Interesting. It took off from Carswell Air Force Base in Texas on the 26th of February, 1949, with a crew of 14 under Captain James Gallagher. It was refueled 4 times in the air by Boeing KB-29 Superfortress tankers over the Azores, Saudi Arabia, the Philippines, and Hawaii. The flight lasted 94 hours and 1 minute and was completed on 2 March. Flew a distance of 37,743 kilometers at an average speed of 398 kilometers per hour. Huh. Interesting. So that caption is there, but then there's a note. The note being, the aircraft actually pictured here is not the Lucky Lady 2. The actual photographed aircraft here is a Boeing B-50D from 1948, and it is in no way related to the Lucky Lady 2. So that's funny, because the B-50A-5 BO Superfortress was the Lucky Lady 2. But apparently this photo is of the B-50D. That is hilarious. And the fact that it's there, it's just after you read this extensive caption, then you find out Nope, that's not what you're looking at. Apparently, this one here is the Lucky Lady 2 from Life magazine. And there it is being refueled. Oh, interesting. So it is the Lucky Lady 2 being refueled. This caption notes, this photograph, usually identified as having been taken during the around the world flight, was not. Note the vertical tail does not have the diamond squadron mark that the airplane displayed during that flight. That's a great note, actually. This is, as we've done some aeronautical things on this stream, I've actually looked at this website a few times, and it seems to be, it seems to have decent information. It's called This Day in Aviation. When I've gone to look at it, it's been a useful place. I've not taken the time to fully vet all of its information, but the fact that it included this photograph, labeled it, captioned it, and noted that oftentimes you'll see this photograph being captioned as happening during the around the world flight, and clarifies that it's not and why it's not. Speaks well for its accuracy. All right, where are we on time? We've got about a half an hour left. So let's see. We could do the Martin XB-48. Airlines in the red. That one's about airlines and their finances. New pilot plus good judgment equals long life. One about air races. That could be interesting. The Boeing XB-47 Stratojet. I think we should do the Stratojet. Might do that one. Ooh, gosh, I want to read them all. They're so good. Like, I like this collection. Let's read about the Martin XB-48 from Martin Aircraft. Do you all want to see the photo before I read the article? Maybe I should do that. Another bomber. Let me pull this up on the screen so you can see it. This is the Martin XB-48. And there's very little information attached to the photo. It's clearly another Air Force photo, but a very different form factor on this bomber than on the Boeing bomber. The Boeing bomber had propellers, and this is a 6 engine, it looks like, and those are not propellers. So pointy. What is the point of the stick pointing out of its nose, I wonder? Maybe we'll find out in the article. I suppose the point is the furthest forward tip of the pole also. Martin XB-48 makes its first flight. Sunday morning, June 22nd, 1947, was bright, cool, and clear. It was such a morning that happens only now and then when it's a pleasure to be alive. At 5 a.m., when the sun was just beginning to make its presence known in the east, few Baltimoreans cared, however, what the weather was. They were getting in at least 40 winks before church or the golf course or a trip to the mountains or seashore. Around the Martin Airport, though, there was no sleepiness. In fact, the place buzzed with activity that would be normal during regular working hours. Ground crewmen, engineers, flight crews, control tower operators, photographers, Army representatives bustled here and there in an unusual activity. Cars bearing a number of top officials of the company slid through the airport gates. The XB-48 was scheduled to fly before 6 o'clock. It wasn't the first time the Army's first 6-jet engine bomber was due to make its maiden flight, but weather conditions had been bad on previous mornings. The day before, for instance, there was a stiff crosswind, and OE Pat Tibbs, Martin's director of flight and chief test pilot, found it inadvisable to take off. But this morning, everything was perfect. Cool air was heavy, so the thin wings of the XB-48 would have maximum lift from its natural element. As the sun's rays grew stronger, visibility increased until the horizon was as distant as the eye could see. Only a few wispy clouds floated high in the blue sky. A hangar door opened and a red mule slowly towed the XB-48 out onto the apron, where it was parked for engine warm-up. Tibbs and his co-pilot, E.R. Dutch Galvin, climbed up the tiny steps which led to the cockpit. In a few minutes, everybody living near the airport was aware that the 48 was warming up. The high whine of the first jet engine was soon joined by the sound of the second, the third, and finally all 6. It was as though a troop of wailing banshees was performing. The sound was like nothing ever heard before, because there is, after all, only one 6-jet engine airplane, and this was it, about to try its wings. Slowly, the airplane taxied to the north end of the main 7,100-foot runway, turned around, nose pointed southward in the general direction of its destination. The Patuxent Naval Air Station, 73 miles away. With brakes on tight, the pilot began speeding up the engine. As the turbines increased and again increased their speed, the whine reached a higher pitch. Black smoke spit from the aft end of the nacelles. The intense heat of the powerful exhaust seared the blades of grass at the end of the runway. Nerves of the observers gathered around the administration building grew taut as their eyes remained glued on the silvery airplane, gleaming in the rays of the rising sun. As the whine of the engines reached its peak, the brakes were released and slowly, ever so slowly, the big bomber began to move down the runway. It gained momentum, sped faster and faster. 6 trails of black smoke spread out behind it. Spectators held their breath. In a few seconds, the wings took hold and light was visible under the landing gear. The XB-48 was airborne. As the big bomber rose, the landing gear was quickly retracted. It was now entirely dependent on the skill of the 2 men in the cockpit, both masters of their trade. Eager eyes at the airport followed the airplane until it was a mere bright speck in the distance, more readily visible by the 6 spumes of trailing smoke than its own configuration. The smoke, incidentally, was perfectly normal in the exhaust of the 6-jet engines. Tibbs climbed the ship eastward, out over the broad waters of the Chesapeake Bay, across the eastern shore of Maryland, out over the Atlantic Ocean for a few minutes. Soon, telephones in police stations and newspapers throughout the shore and in Baltimore were buzzing with reports of an airplane afire. Frantic calls were made to the Martin plant and other aviation centers. Some added flying disc story versions in their confusion. It was hours before radio reports had settled everybody's minds. It was just the XB-48 saying, "Watch my smoke." After a few minutes cruising about, Tibbs and Galvin, headed for their destination, apprised the tower at Patuxent that they were coming in for their landing. A Martin photographer was already there to picture the event. Though a group of Army photographers who were to have taken aerial views of the XB-48 never caught up with the jet-powered ship with their wartime bomber. The approach was made to Patuxent, and slowly the bomber settled down on the long runway at the Naval Air Station. The wheels touched, there was a puff of smoke from each of them, and brakes were applied to bring the ship to rest. The first flight of a new bomber, forerunner in many ways of things to come, had ended successfully. The ship had been in the air 37 minutes. The Martin XB-48 is powered by 6 General Electric J35 gas turbine engines, each of which has a rated thrust of 4,000 pounds, or a total thrust of 24,000 pounds, a maximum power greater than that of 2 giant electric railroad locomotives, each pulling a string of 125 freight cars. 3 engines are housed in each wing. The craft has a speed of over 480 miles per hour and a tactical radius of over 800 miles. A new development in landing gear, especially designed for airplanes flying at very high speeds, is a feature of the XB-48. This is a bicycle-type landing gear with 2 main wheels placed under the fuselage in tandem, retracting into the fuselage. There is not sufficient room in the wings for large wheel wells because the wings are designed for high speeds and must necessarily be extremely thin. With the tandem gear retracting into the fuselage, the thin wings can be used. A small wheel is located near each wingtip to give stability during ground operations. These wheels fold into the nacelles, but they are small and fit into shallow wells. The tandem gear was tested extensively by the Martin Company before it was adapted for use on the XB-48. The Martin XB-26H Marauder was fitted with tandem main wheels and outrigger-type balance wheels, and extensive landing and takeoff tests were made. Results proved the new gear practical. The XB-48 has a wingspan of 108 feet 4 inches, a length of 85 feet 9 inches, and a height of 27 feet 6 inches. The wing area is 1,300 square feet. The total empty weight is 58,500 pounds. There are 3 crew members. It has a bomb capacity of over 10 tons, features axial flow engines, is all metal, has pressure cabin, radar and optical bomb sight, and gun-laying defensive armament in tail only. Has flak protection for jet engine units, self-sealing tanks and lines. The tail turret is remote controlled. 2 are being built and 1 model is to be stripped. The end. G. Grahame Duce, July, 1947. I know, Key Squared. It is so cool. Like, I don't know for certain the purpose of these articles. What editor was he sending them to? What was the potential publication? I wish I knew, because they're really well done. Like, I feel like I was there watching the first flight of the Martin XB-48 bomber. Like, very, very, very descriptive prose, evoking the locale and the event of seeing this airplane make its first flight, followed by the technical detail describing the plane itself. It has to have been for some sort of aerospace magazine or like, yeah, it has to have been. But where? What? Did they ever get published? I need to know. They're so good. Oh gosh. we have so little time, and I want to read more. I think I'll hold off on that one. Let's see, the Stratojet. Do the Stratojet. Future of jet planes. All right. I'm going to prioritize. I think I have time to get through 2 more. So I'm going to do them. And then if we have time, I have 2 additional ones on top of that I would love to do. But this first one here that we're going to read to close things out is just simply titled Jet Pilot. And unfortunately, this one does not have a date, but it is clearly roughly the same time frame as the others. It's on the same paper. The paper has aged similarly. So I would be confident in saying likely sometime in 1947. Let me look and see. I believe, yes. The XB-47 by Boeing. So we were just looking at the Martin XB-48. What we're about to read about is the Boeing XB-47 Stratojet, which there is a photograph of here, which very much looks like a form factor that we would, like, it's approaching what we would expect of like a commercial aircraft today. So shiny, I know. This is, let's see, teapot. This image is from the National Nuclear Security Administration. Interesting. The Boeing B-47 Stratojet. So this is a B-47. XB is the experimental version. Strategic Air Command's primary medium bomber is among the aircraft participating in the current nuclear test series at the Nevada test site, powered by 6 turbojet engines. This swept-wing bomber can fly higher and faster than any bomber in its class. 29 of these aircraft will be used on various teapot shots. Most of them are reconnaissance types, which will be employed on photographic missions. Yeah, so this photograph was taken as part of the Nevada nuclear test teapot series. So public domain, as it was a work of the U.S. Department of Energy. But let's read this article. I wish we had photos in our collections of some of these. It was funny that when I went and looked, none of the planes that were featured in these papers did we have photos of in any of our other collections. We have plenty of aircraft photos, just none of the planes that are featured in these articles. But thankfully, there are public domain images of basically all of them on Wikipedia. So, jet plane. Sometime this month, hey, I guess sometime this month, given a little bit more reading, we could probably actually date this document based on its content fairly easily, since it's starting off by saying sometime this month. So despite the fact that it is undated, it would probably be fairly easy to work out what the date was. Sometime this month, 2 serious young men will climb aboard a strange-looking large aircraft, gun its 6 jet engines, and go soaring off Boeing Field. heading south from Seattle at several hundred miles per hour. Probably no pilots in history have been so carefully prepared for a single job as for this one. The first flight of the Boeing XB-47 Stratojet Army bomber. Sitting in the pilot's seat will be Robert Robbins, a pleasant-faced, blondish young man who looks as though he might have been designed to play guard on someone's college football team. In the co-pilot's seat will be studious-looking Scott Osler, an experienced test pilot at 28. For more than 18 months, they have been getting ready for this hop. They've learned everything there is to know about the XB-47, which is a considerable amount, and have acquired also a vast bit of knowledge on jet airplanes in general. To their way of thinking, however, their flight this month represents more than the result of a year and a half of effort. It's the climax of everything they have ever done in an aviation way, since long before they first heard of the XB-47 or any other jet airplane. We've been building up to this ever since we got into the aviation business, is the way Bob Robbins looks at it. Their scientific preparation for the Stratojet flight program has involved a great deal more than study. They have accumulated practical experience all the way from Moffett Field, California, to Schenectady, New York. They flew the 47, in a synthetic way, of course, before it was out of the jigs. Bob Robbins first found himself in the Stratojet program on a tentative basis in early 1946, when the XB-47 was little more than an array of lines on a drawing board bearing the name Boeing Model 432. At that time, he was called into the office of N.D. Showalter, chief of Boeing Flight Test. The company is in the process of design study on a jet bomber, Showalter told him. Are you interested? It was just that simple, that informal. Robbins decided he was interested and returned to his desk with instructions to think about it and its problems. Thus launched on his jet career, Robbins followed the 432 project in a casual way for several months. He watched the engineering progress, and he read what literature was available on jet planes. Training starts. In June of last year, Robbins suddenly found himself getting deeper into the program. And though his assignment was still largely unofficial, this was at the time the engineers decided to put bicycle landing gear on their yet unborn jet baby. Robbins and Osler were dispatched to Wright Field, where they flew the Martin XB-26H, a special B-26 equipped with a bicycle gear. They proceeded to determine the limitations of this new landing gear arrangement and to evolve their own techniques for taking off and landing. Thereafter, Robbins was sent to Schenectady, where he flew a Boeing B-29, which General Electric was employing as a test bed for its new jet engines. This was Robbins' first personal experience with jets, and he tried some things that he had been wanting to try with them, making starts at various altitudes and playing with the engine for an hour and a half of flight. He came home with a pretty sound knowledge of the differences between conventional and jet engines. After that, he continued to pursue his course of study, and in February of this year, Showalter again called him in. If you're still interested in flying this 47, said Showalter, the job is yours, but first give it some more thought. Take your time, and let me know when you've made a decision. He might have added that Boeing insists every test pilot be thoroughly satisfied with his assignments. If he isn't, he will promptly be replaced for the best interests of all concerned, and there will be no hard feelings. Crew takes shape. It took a month to reach that final decision, and for Robbins, it was the roughest month of the entire XB-47 program. Until now, the job had been tentative. Now, it was right in his lap, to pick up and carry all the way, or to drop. On the other hand, the 47 would probably be the hottest, most radical piece of flying machinery ever taken aloft. It had not only half a dozen jet engines and a tandem landing gear, but swept back wings and tail as well. It would travel at speeds Robbins had never before even approached. The first flight of any new type airplane is a matter calling for study and precautions. The initial hop of a ship as revolutionary as the XB-47 would be a step into something so new as to make any ordinary first flight seem like merely another airline takeoff. With this in mind, Robbins reviewed the Boeing record. Boeing had never yet put into the air a new plane whose performance had been anything less than safe and satisfactory, even though each represented a substantial step forward. Every one was painstakingly proved down to the most minute of details before it was put into the pilot's hands. He studied the engineering data that held the proof, the performance predictions of the XB-47, combined with past records. It was good enough for Robbins. He had satisfied himself that the jet bomber, though it looked like something out of a pseudoscience novel, was in reality a thoroughly safe, flyable machine. Upon Robbins's acceptance of the assignment, Osler was added to the program, together with Robert Lamson as an alternate pilot. Since then, Robbins and Osler have devoted full time to the project. They have lived with that aeroplane 8 hours a day and thought about it during their hours at home. Lamson, too, has kept in touch closely, despite the fact he is simultaneously serving as project pilot on one of Boeing's Stratocruiser test ships. To his experience as a hot plane pilot, gained while handling the test program on the Boeing XF-8B-1 Navy fighter, he has added many hours of study on jet ships and engines in general, and the XB-47 in particular. Experienced as the two regular pilots were, however, neither of them had ever flown an all-jet plane. Thus, the next move was both logical and inevitable. Robbins and Osler were sent early this summer to Muroc Air Base, California, home of the Air Force's jet aircraft. Here, they were introduced to the Lockheed P-80A, the day's hottest thing on wings. Each of them spent more than 5 hours aloft in a P-80A. They got the feel of the jet and increased speed it gave them, and they learned to handle it with familiarity. Landings and takeoffs were an important part of their Muroc training, and so were air starts and refused landings. The Aerojet company supplied them with JATO units, enabling each of them to make jet-assisted takeoffs and refused landings. On Osler's first flight at Muroc, he proved that the Boeing pilots were capable of cool, efficient action in a jet plane emergency. With only 5 minutes fuel remaining, both engine tachometer and generator failed, forcing him to pump down the landing gear by hand. Additional mechanical difficulties with the emergency system made it look for a while as though he would have to crash land his P-80A on only 2 of its 3 wheels. Fighting to get gear down before the tank went completely dry, he finally made it and drew high compliments from Muroc officers. Osler's own reaction was boiled down to one laconic comment: an interesting experience. When the pilot's tour of duty at Muroc was finished, the next phase of their training program was ready. It took them to the giant wind tunnel at California's Moffett Field. At Moffett, they first flew their own ship, the 47. What this amounted to was a steel fuselage section familiarly known as the as what? It's the first word where I haven't been able to make out the handwriting very well. I think it's Vion Master or Vion Monster. I think that's a V, but I'm not certain. A steel fuselage section familiarly known as the Vion Monster, upon which were set the tail surfaces built for the No. 2 XB-47. They provided an exact duplication of the flight performance that will be found when the plane itself gets into the air. Sitting in the Iron Monster. It's Iron Monster. Sitting in the Iron Monster's cockpit, Robbins and Osler flew it and trimmed it, worked the rudder and elevator controls. When they were finished, they knew the XB-47's aerodynamic characteristics. They knew how it would take off and land, how it would handle in flight. On the actual flight, probably this month, they will know what to expect, and they will have the feeling that they have been through much of this before. They will escape some of the tension that ordinarily would accompany the first flight of such a plane as the 47. Before leaving California, Robbins and Osler took care of one more small detail. They visited the University of Southern California, where they ordered crash helmets especially designed by Dr. Charles F. Lombard, a noted aerodynamical authority. The fantastic-looking headgear contains a 2-inch padding of energy-absorbent cellulose material intended to prevent their wearers from being knocked out in rough air or during a bailout. An interesting example of the manner in which every detail was covered in the preparation of Boeing's 2 jet pilots is their pre-flight trek to Wright Field once more. Here they were prepared physically and physiologically for the unlikely circumstance which might necessitate their bailing out of the XB-47 in flight. Sitting on a powder keg. Inside a hangar at Wright Field is a tower with roller coaster-like rails rising to a height of 100 feet. It is called an ejection seat indoctrination test rig, and on it, Robbins and Osler went through an experience similar to being ejected from a plane in flight. In the Wright Field ejection seat, as in the ones on the XB-47 itself, pilot and co-pilot are quite literally sitting on a powder keg, a 37mm shell case loaded with a special powder charge hurls the seat into mid-air. In the case of the test rig, seat and pilot are thrown aloft on the 100-foot track, with gravity halting their ascent at some 40 feet. In their home base training, the pilots have become just about as much a part of the plane as its engines or its wings. They have followed it across the drafting boards and through the shops. They have examined the most minute of details in its fabrication, its assembly, its inspection. They have spent endless hours simply poking about the ship until they know its inner workings the way a watchmaker knows the inside of an engine. Class of 47. The pilots have even gone to school to complete their jet education. Classes were conducted by the Boeing Service Department on all phases of the 47, even its servicing, with the student body comprising members of flight test, inspection, and maintenance. Both Robbins and Osler have backgrounds that enable them to talk the language of the engineers who designed the XB-47 and the mechanics who built it. Robbins graduated from Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Aeronautical Engineering and has an aircraft and aircraft engine mechanics license, which he values almost as much as his pilot's license. Osler has a degree in aeronautical engineering from the University of Washington. Both men had long experience on commercial airlines before joining Boeing. At Boeing, Robbins did wartime test work on the Navy XP-BB-1 Sea Ranger and on the Guinea Pig, the XB-29 Superfortress, which served as a research ship for all the B-29 models that followed. He conducted the B-29 test program when it was the hottest in the country, with the possible outcome of war in the Pacific hanging upon its success. He made hundreds of flights to record the data necessary to put the B-29 in full production and combat. Osler served too on the wartime B-29 test program and later moved to the XF-8B-1, the Boeing Navy fighter, with counter-rotating propellers. Between the two men, they have many a year's experience in flight testing Boeing airplanes. Ahead of them now lies an experience Both are anticipating with a considerable amount of enthusiasm. There will be a busy month of engine tests, taxi runs, and detailed inspections. They will head down the runway and into the skies on the first of a long series of flights. They will put to use the most complete educational background ever given a pilot team for one program of test flights. The end. I feel like I was just reading the voiceover for a documentary. It's well done. And it's interesting, and it's documenting the emergence of jet aircraft into the world. It's the point of transition from propeller-based aircraft to jet engine aircraft. This collection is so cool. I wish I knew more. I want to know more. It's so cool. The other one I was going to read was The Future of Jet Planes, but I don't have the time because it is the end of stream. But I still want to share more of these articles. So watch later this month for a blog post on the Special Collections and University Archives blog about the G. Grahame Duce papers and the future of jet planes as seen from 1947. But that, I think, is where we will leave off the content for today. Let me go ahead and figure out where we're going to go and what's coming up. Thank you, of course, everybody for joining me today. It was a small crowd today, but I hope that you all enjoyed the content. I certainly did. I thought that this was just a lot of fun. I appreciate all of the help with people looking up some things as we were sort of looking at the more technical detail stuff at the beginning. This has been a lot of fun. Indeed, Key Squared. So let me look and see where we might go. Who might be on? I mean, you all probably know Stephen Joyce is probably on and is a good option for a place to go. Jellyfish. Sadly, there are not other libraries or other educational streams that are on right now for me to go to. But so I do think that we will pop in over with Stephen Joyce, who is apparently currently playing a game called Finding Hannah. Next week, I have a guest. Next week, Archivist Kira should be here to join me for stream as we talk about Kellogg's, the food company. So that should be a good stream. This will be the third time that Archivist Kira has joined me for stream, and hopefully some of you will pop in next week to join us. But yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I see you again soon. And until I do, keep exploring history, everybody.